20 engineers failed to fix it. Discover how one delivery driver made an incredible change. In the small town of Maplewood, desperation hung in the air like a thick fog. The bridge that connected this tight-knit community to the outside world lay in ruins after the storm swept through. Families felt stranded, businesses were locked up tight, and whispers of concern echoed through the streets. But 20 engineers, armed with blueprints and the best intentions, had failed. All their estimates and calculations led to one irrefutable truth. The bridge stood broken. Hope flickered like a dying candle, but one man was determined to reignite it. Tim, a 32-year-old delivery driver, was the embodiment of resilience. He served his family like he served his community steadfastly and with love. With each delivery, he saw faces filled with worry, kids peering out from behind curtains as their parents glanced at the open road no longer leading anywhere. Tim carried the weight of his responsibilities like a badge of honor. A devoted husband to Sarah and loving father to their 2 young children, he channeled the perseverance instilled in him by his Navy veteran father. Yet beneath his strong exterior, doubts gnawed at him. Bills piled up like the fallen leaves in autumn, and the pressure to provide became a spine-chilling storm in itself. One evening, as rain poured down in sheets, he grabbed his jacket and climbed into his truck. He was on the same route, day in and day out, delivering packages as he had always done. But today felt different. Today, the air carried a heavy desolation. He saw familiar streets abandoned by laughter and warmth, shop windows darkened by uncertainty. The community he cherished was unraveling, and in his heart, he could feel their collective pain. But then a flame ignited within him. What they could fix the bridge? Tim imagined rallying his neighbors, tapping into the unique skills they possess: carpenters, welders, mechanics, and turning despair into action. At the town hall that night, he stood before a crowd, the weight of their sorrow weighing heavily on his shoulders. "We can do this," he proclaimed, his voice steady. "Together, we have the skills, the strength, and the heart to rebuild. Let us show them what our community can do." Excitement rippled through the room. Hope blinked to life, pushing through the shadows. They began planning, drawing up blueprints on napkins, laughter mingling with determination. But just as they gathered momentum, the engineers returned, bringing an air of authority that stifled the hope like a blanket over a flame. Their words dripped with skepticism, mocking the community's initiative, unraveling Tim's dream. Anger surged within him. How could they dismiss the very spirit that made Maplewood alive? Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Tim stood firm, his heart pounding as he faced the engineers. "You may see a crumbled bridge, but we see our future. Don't underestimate us." His eyes blazed, not just with anger, but with the fire of a community ready to fight. Families were struggling, and smiles had disappeared, but together they could pull through the storm. As silence settled, the tension in the air thickened. Would the engineers listen? Would hope flicker back to life? Or would the hope of Maplewood crash like the bridge itself? The answer felt just out of reach, hanging in the air like the last tendril of an enchanting dream. Tim knew one thing: if they were to heal as a community, they had to stand united against the odds. The room was electric with anticipation, and Tim could feel the weight of his neighbor's eyes on him. As he looked out, he saw not just uncertainty, but also determination reflected back. Mrs. Jenkins, the retired schoolteacher, nodded her head, her weathered face etched with resolve. Jake, the local mechanic, leaned forward, fists clenched with a fierce spirit. The small-town heart was starting to beat again, and it filled Tim with a rush of adrenaline. "Let's take a vote," Tim shouted, trying to keep the momentum alive. "Who here believes we can rebuild that bridge?" A chorus of voices rose, each one more enthusiastic than the last. "We can do this." "Yes." Those words wrapped around Tim like a warm embrace, spurring him forward as the crowd stirred with energy. But even among the waves of support, he could still feel the engineer's presence looming like an ominous shadow that a thin man with glasses cleared his throat, stepping forward. "This is reckless, folks. You need to understand the complexity of a project like this. It's not as simple as fixing a fence or mending a fence gate. There are safety regulations, engineering standards." Tim felt the anger bubbling inside him again. He held up a hand to quiet the crowd. "We know the challenges, and we're ready to face them. We've got passion, we've got skills, and above all, we have each other." He gestured toward the crowd. "Look around. There are more of us than there are of them. We have families to feed, children to support, and community to revive." His voice rang out, filled with fervor. "Isn't that worth any risk?" The crowd erupted into cheers, and the engineers exchanged uneasy glances. Tim could see cracks in their certainty, but he knew it wasn't enough to sway them entirely. They were professionals. They were trained to see the risks, but this was different. This was hard. As the meeting wound down, plans began to take shape. They mapped out a timeline, gathered tools and materials, and divided responsibilities. It felt surreal to organize a community effort, yet it was invigorating. Tim felt like a conductor in front of an orchestra, elated as he brought together the unique talents of each person in the room. Brick by brick, they would piece together their future. That night, as Tim pulled into his driveway, exhaustion washed over him. Sarah greeted him with a warm smile and her arms open wide. "You did it, didn't you?" she asked, sensing the energy radiating from him. "I think we might have a chance," he replied, pulling her close. The weight of the world felt lightened, if only a little, but doubt lingered in his mind. What if the engineers were right? What if the bridge's structural integrity was beyond their abilities? As he lay in bed, thoughts of their skepticism gnawed at him. Would they all be left vulnerable if it failed? Before sleep finally pulled him under, he whispered a silent prayer for guidance. In the days that followed, enthusiasm surged through Maplewood as preparations began in earnest. Every morning, people gathered at the site of the wreckage, armed with tools, tempered by determination. The sun rose each day to a chorus of laughter and music. Yet despite the blossoming hope, the engineers orchestrated further hurdles, filing complaints and feigning concerns. Tim could feel their resistance in the air, and with every passing day, the battle became more than just about the bridge. It was about identity, pride, and survival. Would they prevail, or would they be crushed by the weight of their doubts? That question lingered as they took their first steps onto the remains of the bridge. The first piece of wood was laid down, a heartbeat for Maplewood's revival. But would their resolve stand strong enough to face the ultimate test? Would their dream rise or fall as each nail was driven in? Tim squared his shoulders, feeling the draw of something greater than himself. With every challenge ahead, he was ready to dive into the fray. But little did he know, something deeper was waiting just around the corner that would test not just their resolve, but the very essence of their community. The sun rose steadily, casting a golden hue over Maplewood. The air buzzed with the sound of hammers striking nails, echoing over the river like a promise. Tim stood at the edge of the construction site, surveying the chaos of activity sprawling before him, feeling a simmering pride. Each face he saw Jake, Mrs. Jenkins, the high school kids, they were all pouring their hearts into this project. He never felt so connected to the community, as if they were woven into a single fabric. But even amid all the progress, doubt gnawed at him like a persistent shadow. The engineers were still lurking around, whispering warnings and pointing out flaws. Tim cared about their concerns. He respected their expertise. Yet, deep down, he felt the spark of something special igniting in the town, a strength he couldn't ignore. "Hey, Tim," a voice called, breaking through his thoughts. It was Jake, his hands stained with paint and sweat glistening on his brow. "We're hitting a snag over here with these supports. Can you come take a look?" Tim nodded and made his way over, determination fueling his steps. A small group had gathered around a set of rotting wooden beams, their faces drawn with confusion. "What's going on?" Tim asked. "It looks like these supports aren't going to hold," Jake said, frowning at the mess. "If we can't fix this, it's all over." Panic flooded Tim's chest. They had come so far. "We can't give up now," he exclaimed, his voice rising. "Let us think this through. There has to be a solution." The crowd shifted, uncertainty written on their faces. Tim took a deep breath, trying to harness their collective anxiety into something useful. "What if we reinforce the beams with metal plates? We can get some from the old warehouse down the street." Another voice chimed in, "Yeah, there's a pile of scrap metal we can use." The group's energy shifted, transforming. Hope began to spark as they rallied around each other, sharing ideas and rallying enthusiasm. Tim felt the tension ease, replaced by the electricity of teamwork surging back. Hours passed like minutes as they gathered the metal and started working together. Laughter mingled with the clang of tools, filling the air with sounds of resilience and hope. Each piece they added felt like stitching their community back together, one small bit at a time. Tim caught Sarah's eye across the site, and she smiled back, a glance that filled his chest with warmth. This was just about a bridge. It was about them, who they were, who they could be. Then, as the sun began to set, casting a soft orange glow across the landscape, a delegation of engineers approached. Tim's stomach knotted again at the sight of them. Despite their concerns, he knew he needed to face them, to stand for what they were trying to accomplish. Tim, the thin man with glasses, spoke first, his brow furrowing. "We need to talk about the safety. This is not going to pass inspection if you keep making changes without oversight." Tim stepped forward, resolute. "With all due respect, sir, we aren't looking for shortcuts. We're finding ways to make this work. We know our town. We know our people. This bridge represents our future. We're doing this together, and together we'll find a way." As he spoke, he noticed a flicker of surprise among the engineers, a glimmer of recognition that maybe they were witnessing something extraordinary. Maplewood wasn't just rebuilding a bridge. It was rebuilding itself. But as the engineers pondered over his words, Tim could feel the weight of their skepticism still hanging in the air. What if this wasn't enough? That night, after a hard day's labor, Tim returned home, fatigue washing over him. Sarah greeted him at the door, her warm eyes filled with concern. "You okay?" "I don't know," Tim admitted, the vulnerability spilling out. "I'm scared we won't measure up." She placed a hand on his shoulder, grounding him. "You're doing the right thing. Whatever happens, we'll face it together." But little did they know the next day would bring a challenge neither of them could foresee, one that might shake the very foundation of their resolve. The morning came too soon. Tim blinked against the light pouring through the kitchen window, feeling the weight of the day's uncertainty press down on him. He could hear the distant sounds of the construction site, but today felt different. It felt heavy, with an unseen threat lurking under the promise of steel. And with breakfast, Sarah sat across from him, stirring her coffee slowly. The kitchen was filled with a quiet tension, the kind that wrapped around them like a thin veil. "You sure you don't want some eggs?" she asked, her voice laced with concern. "Not hungry," Tim replied, his mind already running scenarios of what might happen when they gathered at the site again. They left the house together, and Tim felt Sarah's hand squeeze his as they walked to the site. The sun was breaking through the clouds, casting streaks of gold beside the river. He took a deep breath, trying to draw in the warmth of the day ahead. But when they arrived, the atmosphere was different. The engineers were gathered in a tight huddle, voices raised in agitation. The sight made Tim's stomach churn. He approached slowly, his heart thudding louder with every step. "What's going on?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. One of the engineers, a heavy-set man with a clipboard, turned toward him. "We're missing vital materials for the safety inspections. Without them, we can't proceed." Tim felt his heart sink. All their hard work teetered on a knife's edge. What do you mean, missing materials? We have everything we need. Not everything, the engineer replied sharply. We need specific support beams that conform to new safety regulations. Without them, this project is over. A murmur of panic spread through the gathered crew. Tim looked around the faces of his friends, and neighbors' fear was creeping in, casting a shadow over their hopeful efforts. Hey, Jake said, stepping forward, his brow furrowed. What if we find another way? We've been fixing this whole bridge ourselves. There has to be another option. Tim nodded, a fire igniting within him. We've come this far together, he said, raising his voice so everyone could hear. We've kept this alive, and we can find a way to work through this. Maybe there's a local supplier who can help, but the engineers were shaking their heads. We don't have time. The inspection is coming next week. If we can't get those beams, we're done. This town deserves this bridge, but we can't compromise safety. Tim felt his chest tighten, panic mixed with anger. They were so close, yet it felt like everything was slipping through their fingers. Then, in the midst of the uncertainty, a voice broke through. What about Bill? Sarah's eyes sparked with urgency. The delivery driver. He knows everyone in town and might know where to find those beams. The group turned to Tim, hope sparking in their eyes, but also a lingering doubt. Do you really think he can help? Someone asked. It's worth a shot, Tim said, feeling the rush of determination. Even if it seems impossible, we can't let this be the end. Let us split up. Sarah, you and I will find Bill, and everyone else, keep working on what you can. As they moved, Tim felt a surge of energy. The fate of the bridge rested on uncertain shoulders, but he could still feel the heartbeat of the town behind him. The stakes had never felt higher, and it pushed him forward. With each step towards Bill's little logistics office, Tim couldn't shake the feeling that time was slipping away. What if they were too late? What if they couldn't find the needed beams in time? As they approached, a chill of anticipation ran through him. Bill was well connected, but would he have the answer they needed? The door swung open to reveal a cluttered haven of plans and boxes, and there was Bill, tired but always smiling. What is that, you two looking so serious? Tim took a breath, ready to lay everything on the line. We need your help, Bill. The bridge, it all depends on you. Little did they know, their problems were about to intersect with something far greater than they could ever anticipate. Tim's pulse raced as he stepped into the office, the smell of stale coffee and worn-out blueprints filling the air. Bill's friendly demeanor was a familiar comfort, but the weight of urgency hung in the room like a thick fog. What is this all about? Bill asked, glancing between Tim and Sarah, his eyebrows raised in genuine concern. We need those support beams, Tim said, straightening up, his voice firm despite the turmoil inside. There's no way we can finish the bridge without them, and the inspection is just days away. Do you know anyone who can help us? Bill paused, rubbing his chin thoughtfully. I might have a few contacts. The problem is the new regulations. People don't like taking risks with their supplies these days. Anything is better than nothing right now, Sarah added, her voice like a thread weaving hope into the conversation. Tim seized the moment, laying it all out. This isn't just about structure. It's about our community, our town. People are counting on that bridge. It isn't just wood and steel. It's hope for many of us opportunities. We can't let it fall apart now. Bill nodded, his expression shifting. You're right. Okay, let us make some calls. I'll do what I can. He grabbed his phone, but his eyes twinkled with something deeper, a hint of the tenacity that Tim admired. The phone rang, each tone a reminder of the ticking clock. Bill spoke quickly, his words flowing as he rattled off connections and potential suppliers. Tim's heart swelled with each "let me get back to you," as if each word had its own weight. Suddenly, Bill's face shifted. I got a lead. A local supplier just got a shipment of beams in, but it's a long shot. They usually only deal with big projects. Tim felt a flicker of hope. Can we make it there? We can explain our situation. Sure, but it's a bit of a drive, Bill replied. A cloud of caution crossed over his face. What if they turn us away? Then we'll find another way. Tim insisted, his resolve solidifying. We can't give up now. We owe it to everyone who has been working on this. Bill looked at him, weighing his determination against the reality of the situation. Finally, he nodded. "All right, let us go. Grab your keys, Sarah. Let's south hit that road." As they piled into Bill's battered pickup truck, every moment felt electric with urgency. The engine roared to life, drowning out their fears as they raced towards the supplier's yard. Tim's hands gripped the seat, every jolt in the road echoing his anxiety. "Do you think they'll listen?" Sarah's voice was small, but there was hope swelling in her tone. "We'll make them listen," Tim said, determination flooding his veins. "We have a story to tell, a bridge that unites us all. They can't ignore that." As they pulled onto the gravel lot, a massive warehouse loomed over them, like a fortress of possibilities. Tim felt his chest tighten again, fear and hope warring inside him. What if they were turned away again? What if this was yet another dead end? "Here goes nothing," he said as he stepped out of the truck, his heart pounding in synchrony with the ticking clock of their timeline. They approached the entrance together, ready to plead their case. But no sooner had they stepped inside than they were met by a stern-faced man in a hard hat. "Can I help you?" he said, arms crossed, skepticism etched across his brow. Tim took a breath, the weight of the town resting on his shoulders. "Yes, we need your help." But just as he opened his mouth to explain the urgency, the harsh ring of a phone echoed through the warehouse. The man's expression darkened, and he glanced back at screen. "Excuse me," he said, moving away. Tim's jaw tightened, tension soaring as he exchanged glances with Bill and Sarah. Would this prove hope or disappointment? And that's when Tim noticed a commotion near the back of the warehouse. He turned, sensing the shift in energy, and his heart raced anew. Something was happening, something important. "Let us figure this out," he murmured, determination flooding back. The day still held its mysteries, and each moment felt like a fragile thread in there. Shared dream. What lay behind that curtain of chaos? And would it be the answer they sought, or another twist in their journey? Tim exchanged a tense glance with Sarah, her eyes wide with curiosity and worry. Bill's expression matched his own. Something was amiss. The commotion at the back of the warehouse intensified, voices rising and falling like a wave of anxiety crashing into them. "Should we check it out?" Tim asked, instinctively stepping toward the source of the noise. "Maybe we should stay put," Sarah replied, her voice trembling slightly. "We don't want to get involved in something we don't understand." But Tim could feel the pull of that chaos, an undeniable magnetism that called to him. "No, this could be our chance," he insisted, steeling himself. "Let us go. We can help. We have to." Before either of them could respond, Tim took a deep breath and marched toward the source of the sound, with Bill and Sarah reluctantly following. As they neared the back, the details came into focus. A group of workers had gathered around a massive crate, shrouded in packing material. It looked out of place, as if it had just been dropped in from another world. "What is going on?" Tim ventured, his voice steady despite the tumult in his chest. One of the workers turned, a young man with smudged hands and a worried look. This shipment was supposed to go to a construction site nearby. "But there's an issue," he said, gesturing toward the crate. "What kind of issue?" Bill asked, stepping in to lend his authority to the moment. "Just see for yourself," the worker replied, stepping aside. Tim felt the weight of anticipation and fear pressing against his chest. They shuffled closer, and as Tim peered inside the partially open crate, his heart sank. He could see beams, solid, sturdy beams that looked perfect for their project. But there was something off. They were stamped with a symbol Tim recognized from his training, a warning about structural use. "If these 1T pass inspection, we're dead in the water," Tim whispered, panic washing over him. Before anyone could respond, the stern man in the hard hat returned. "All business. What has to hold up?" he barked, scanning the crowd. His gaze landed on Tim's group. "What are you lot doing here?" "We were looking for some support beams." "Actually," Tim replied, desperation threading through his words. "And these are not for you," the man interrupted sharply, crossing his arms again. "But what if we could take them off your hands?" Sarah interjected, her voice rising. "They could save our project." The man's eyebrows furrowed, caught between annoyance and a flicker of surprise. And why would I give you beams that nobody wants? You know how much trouble I'd be in? Because sometimes it's not just about rules, Tim said, his tone sensitive but firm. If there's a chance we can use them, we can make it happen. This isn't just about beams or paperwork. It's about lives. This bridge, it means everything to our community. The warehouse seemed to grow silent as the man considered Tim's words. The other workers watched, their collective breaths held. I don't know. The liability, the man muttered, glancing back at the crate as if it might somehow provide him with a solution. Tim could see the conflict in his eyes, the human side, fighting against the rigid structure of regulations. Sometimes the best changes come from unexpected places, Bill chimed in, adding his voice to the plea. You never know what can happen when the right opportunity emerges. Isn't that what this business is about? Tim felt hope flickering back to life, a fragile flame with wings. The man sighed heavily, the weight of the world on his shoulders. Look, if you take them, you're on your own. I'm not signing off on anything. You'll have to convince the inspector yourself. Tim's heart raced. We will. Just give us a chance. The man regarded him for a long moment. Fine, he finally said, the reluctant acceptance carving a path through his skepticism. But you better handle this properly. I can't afford another mistake. As a wave of relief washed over them, Tim exchanged a glance with Sarah and Bill. Thank you. We won't let you down. As they pulled the beams from the crate, adrenaline coursed through their veins. Each piece felt like a lifeline, stitching together dreams that had been fraying at the edges. But the clock was still ticking. They had to act fast. Just then, a loud crash from overhead echoed through the warehouse, snapping their attention. All eyes turned upward as a metal sign swayed precariously, about to fall. In that split second, Tim's instincts ignited. Get back, he shouted, leaping toward the danger without thinking that as chaos erupted again. Would Tim's instincts save them all or plunge them deeper into disaster? Tim's heart pounded as he raced toward the falling sign. Time slowed, every detail sharpening the glint of metal in the grim warehouse lighting. The looks of terror on Sarah and Bill's faces, the workers stepping back, instinctively trying to create distance from the impending collapse. He barely had a second to process his own thoughts. Driven only by the need to protect them, he felt the ground shift beneath him, a tremor of urgency propelling him forward. Just as he reached the central point, the sign came crashing down. The impact sent a shockwave through the air. Tim ducked instinctively, arms shielding his face, and felt a sharp pain as his shoulder clipped the edge of the crate. His feet stumbled, but he quickly regained his balance, eyes scanning the area for Sarah and Bill. Tim, Sarah's voice broke through his haze, filled with a mix of fear and determination, that he turned to see her and Bill, each frozen in place as debris scattered across the floor. The sign had missed them, but the chaos had shaken everyone to their core. Heart still racing, Tim hurried back to where they stood, disoriented, yet somehow alive. You okay? He asked, looking for any sign of injury. Yeah, I think so. Just shocked, Sarah replied. Her voice trembled slightly. Bill nodded, gripping the edge of the crate tightly, his knuckles white. That was too close, he said, breathing heavily. The foreman had rushed back, eyes wide in disbelief. What the hell just happened? He shouted, voice laced with panic. Tim took a deep breath, steadying himself. The sign, it nearly fell on us. We need to secure the area. It's unsafe. The foreman glared at him, but something changed in his eyes. You just saved them, he stammered, catching up to the moment, his anger spent. But you'll need to do it again. There's no inspection if the site's not safe. Tim's heart sank. He thought of that. You're right, but we can fix it. Together. Just give us a chance. Their eyes locked, and for a moment, the foreman seemed to grapple with the possibilities. Fine, he finally said, exhaling heavily. I'll give you a crew to help clear this mess. But you make sure it's done fast. Tim nodded, relief flooding over him as he gathered the others. Let us move. We don't have time to waste. As they got to work, Tim couldn't shake the feeling of being on the brink of something significant. The adrenaline subsided, replaced by a sense of purpose. With beams in hand, he felt empowerment surge through the group. Moments passed as they fixed the fallen sign, clearing debris and ensuring safety lines were in place for the rest of the operation. Laughter and chatter mingled in the air as they worked, hope slowly taking root amid potential disaster. But then another sound cut through, a low rumble that seemed to shake the very foundations beneath their feet. "What was that?" Bill asked, eyes wide. Tim's pulse quickened again. "I don't know, but we need to see." As they all turned towards the source of the noise, something heavy thudded against the floor. Whatever was coming next, it felt somehow worse than before. What had they unleashed with the choice of the beams? Would the warehouse stand against the hidden forces now stirring in their midst? Tim knew the coming events would change everything. The vibrations echoed in Tim's chest as he stood frozen, his heart thumping hard against his ribcage. The air felt electric, charged with suspense. They could feel it, a danger lurking beneath the surface, waiting to strike again. "Stay alert," Tim shouted, forcing himself to move, pulling Sarah and Bill along with him. He needed to get to the source of that noise. They ventured deeper into the warehouse, past stacks of crates and machinery, until they reached the far corner. When they arrived, what they found took their breath away. A large metal door stood ajar, swinging lightly as if beckoning them to enter. The ominous rumbles came from within, a deep growl that seemed to resonate with the very walls surrounding them. "Do you think we should go in?" Sarah asked, her voice shaky, barely above a whisper. Tim glanced at Bill, who was shifting his weight from foot to foot, uncertainty written all over his face. "We can't turn back now. If there is something wrong inside, we need to know," he replied, trying to sound more confident than he felt. They stepped through the door, the creaking sound of metal resonating behind them. Inside, the atmosphere felt heavy, the air thick and damp. Dim overhead lights flickered, casting strange shadows that danced across the walls. The menacing thudding continued, a steady rhythm that echoed ominously. Then they saw a huge machine, towering in the center of the room, wires hanging like vines. It pulsed with energy, the source of the noise. A crowd of workers huddled around it, eyes wide, desperate. It seemed the team Tim had saved was now trapped in an even more precarious situation. "What is happening?" Tim shouted, urgency rising in his voice. One of the engineers, a young woman with wild hair and frantic eyes, turned to him. "We're trying to shut it down. Something's malfunctioning. If we don't fix it soon, it'll blow." Tim felt the weight of her words pressing down on him, every second counting. "Let's get to it then," he replied, channeling the adrenaline surging inside him. With quick decisions made, they dived into action. They clustered around the machine, trying to make sense of the chaos pouring out from it. Bill read the manual hastily. Sarah held tools, while Tim steadied the device, taking deep breaths to fight the swirling anxiety. "Here," Sarah shouted, handing Tim a wrench. "This bolt looks loose. If we accelerate the repairs here, we might reduce the strain." Tim nodded, determination kicking in yet again. He sank the wrench into place, twisting hard, muscles straining. He could feel the heat emanating from the machine, the pulse of danger growing more pronounced. The workers backed away, eyes trained on him and his small team. "Come on, we've got this," Bill said, his voice a rallying cry. A few workers joined in, gathering around. Then, from the shadows, an unexpected figure stepped forward. The foreman. He was panting, panic etched on his face. "What are you doing? Get everyone back, too late." Sarah shot back, her focus unwavering. "We're in this together now." Tim glanced at the foreman, expecting anger, but found desperation instead. The man seemed to recognize the urgency, nodding as he approached the machine. They worked in tandem, tightening bolts, cutting power lines, and removing panels. It felt like a race against time, every second ticking down, but the spark of hope ignited among them. Just as they tightened the last bolt, the machine released a deafening roar. Tim's heart stopped for a beat. "Did we do it?" He breathed, searching the faces around him. Then silence blanketed the room. But not for long. A small whirring sound began, growing louder, vibrating through the floor. The machine trembled. Was it starting up again? Panic broke out. Workers stumbled back. Fear etched across their faces. Tim's stomach dropped. They were not finished yet. How can we stop it? He yelled, adrenaline racing through his veins again. They needed a plan, and fast. With everything on the line, Tim realized they could either succumb to fear or find a way through together. Would they succeed, or was this moment about to spiral tragically out of control? The machine shuddered violently, and the whirring intensified, drowning out any coherent thought. The air crackled with tension, and Tim's heart raced. He could sense the fear bubbling over among the workers. Their eyes darted towards the exit, as if anticipating the building's end. "Get everyone clear," the foreman yelled. His voice sliced through the chaos, but it was too late. A few remained, rooted by the need to help, to face the uncertainty together. "Tim," Sarah shouted, her voice barely carrying over the escalating noise. "What do we do now?" Tim glanced at the machine again. The red lights blinked ominously, and alarming sounds crescendoed. He could feel the weight of every second pressing against him. "We need to override its parameters somehow," he suggested, a desperate idea igniting. Bill nodded, his jaw set. "Let us find the control panel. Maybe we can initiate a shutdown sequence manually." Together, they rushed toward a cramped corner of the room, where a flickering screen barely held its own against the chaos. The frenzied scene around them faded into a blur as they focused on the sea of buttons and switches. Tim's fingers trembled as he scanned the diverse controls. "Where's the emergency shut-off?" he yelled, panic creeping into his voice. "Right here," Sarah pointed, relief spilling over her features. But Tim's heart sank as a burst of energy erupted from the machine, sending a shockwave through the air. They staggered back, and Tim felt the heat wash over him, the ferocity of the moment intensifying. This wasn't just about fixing a machine anymore. It was about survival. "We're running out of time," Bill shouted, his voice tinged with urgency. "Is there a manual override?" "Let me check." Sarah rifled through scattered papers, her brow furrowed. "It's got to be here." As time slipped away, Tim took a deep breath, channeling every ounce of determination. He turned to the workers still lingering, whispering encouragement. "We need to believe we can do this. Help us find the right controls." With newfound purpose, they swarmed the panel, voices rising in a desperate symphony of cooperation. Tim caught a glimpse of fear battling hope in their eyes. They were in this together. While panic may have crept in, solidarity began to shine through. Then Sarah shouted, "I found it. The emergency manual says we need to disengage the power source first." "Where?" Tim pressed, his fingers itching for action. "On the side there. A lever." She pointed emphatically. Tim rushed to it, feeling the slick sweat on his palms. He pulled the lever with all his strength, every muscle in his body engaged. The machine sputtered, and for a brief moment, it stopped, but just as relief washed over him, the ground trembled once more. A low, menacing growl rolled through the air. "Tim!" Bill yelled, his eyes wide. "We don't have much time." The workers began to hum with frantic energy, each second thinning the air around them. A mixture of fear and adrenaline propelled Tim forward. He could not let them down now. Drawing on every ounce of resolve, he moved back to the panel. With shaky hands, he began pressing buttons, searching for the correct sequence. "Guys, I need your eyes on this. Focus." Each attempt felt heavier as the noise crescendoed again. The machine was readying itself for something catastrophic. Just as frustration bubbled to the surface, Tim found a button labeled "Initiate Emergency Shutdown." His heart raced furiously. There was no turning back now. "Everyone get down," he barked, sinking to his knees. Would this be the moment they finally found safety, or was the ride just beginning? With a trembling finger, Tim slammed his hand down on the emergency shutdown button. All the noise seemed to halt for a moment, a fragile silence hanging thick in the air. His heart raced, hope and fear colliding in a thunderstorm within him. Suddenly, the machine erupted into a cacophony of alarms and screeching metal. as if it were protesting against its own shutdown. The ground shook violently beneath them, sending vibrations that rattled everyone's bones. But Tim held his breath, hope pooling in his chest. It was working. "Get away from it," the foreman shouted, hurting the workers back in a frenzy as smoke curled from the machine. But Tim couldn't move. He was captivated by the energy, the chaos, the very essence of their struggle. They'd come this far. They weren't about to give up now. "Tim," Sarah's voice broke through the noise, pulling him back. "Get back." But even in the face of adversity, he felt a pressure, the urge to fight for something much more than just a bridge. It was for the heart of Maplewood. The machine began sputtering, the noise contorting into a darker growl as it teetered between chaos and silence. "Just a few seconds, come on," he muttered, sweat drenching his brow. The seconds felt eternal. But then, finally a flash of red lights blinked, and, with a deafening roar, the machine powered down. Silence descended like a soft blanket, thick and suffocating, but filled with the hope of victory. Tim stood amidst the remains of the commotion, his breaths ragged, eyes wide. Cheers erupted from the workers, a wave of triumph washing over the group. They were safe. They had overcome the odds, together, united by one dream: the bridge, the community. Bill turned to Tim, eyes shining with uncontainable pride. "You did it! We did it!" The foreman, still breathing heavily, walked forward, face softening into a smile as he witnessed the extraordinary resolve of a community brought together. "You've shown me something today, something I didn't think was possible." "Just wait until this bridge is completed," Tim replied, his heart swelling. "We're going to rebuild Maplewood, piece by piece." As the group came together, applauding one another and sharing laughter that dissipated the remnants of fear, Tim felt an overwhelming sense of completion, of purpose. The bridge wasn't just a structure anymore. Now, it was a symbol, a mirror reflecting their strength, determination, and collective spirit. Days passed as they finished the bridge, laughter mingling with the clang of tools, moment by moment turning the dream into reality. When they finally stood together, not just as workers, but as family, the town held its breath, seeing their heart brought to life. Tim's children excitedly scampered around the bridge, their laughter mingling with the sounds of construction. Nearby, other families gathered, eyes sparkling with anticipation of the first crossing, a promise of life returning to Maplewood. When it was finally done, they joined hands, a link of unity as they approached the newly built bridge. Tim looked around at the smiling faces. Each person carried a story, each crossed path leading to a shared journey. Taking a deep breath, Tim stepped forward, the pride swelling in his chest. "Together," he shouted, his voice echoing against the steel. "We are Maplewood, and this bridge is our heart." As they crossed, the excitement pulsed through them like an electric current. It was more than just a bridge. It was the promise of community, a reminder that together they could face anything. Tim stood at the far end of the bridge, a radiant smile lighting up his face as he took in the scene. Families hugged, kids ran, and laughter echoed across the river. They had done it. They had turned despair into hope, and together they stood tall, united. "Hey, Tim," Sarah called, walking towards him, eyes shining. "You were amazing. The town needed you, and you answered." "No," he said, his heart full. "We needed each other, and we made it work." As moments turned into memories, he realized it wasn't just a bridge they built. It was a bond, a family that would keep them strong for generations to come. The sun dipped below the horizon, wrapping Maplewood in a warm embrace. And amid all the joy and celebration, one thing became abundantly clear. Hope is alive and well in this community. This is your moment. You need to subscribe now to not miss the next exclusive stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and be a part of the family. Comment about your favorite part of this journey and your reactions. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Don't wait not even one more second to share. Your support truly matters.